Imagine the silence, only wind, cold, and an endless chain of mountains. A place where the map dissolves into snow and the desert marks the edge of the known world. And yet there were men who continued forward. The locals called it Chile, a name the Spaniards adopted to describe those frontier lands, a wild territory of volcanoes, deserts, and valleys that seemed forged by the hand of God. In the year 1535, Diego de Almagro, a veteran of countless wars, looked south and believed that his destiny awaited him there. He carried with him blood, gunpowder, and a promise to find another Peru. He crossed deserts where horses died. He crossed mountain ranges where the cold killed more surely than the sword. And when he finally saw the Copiapo Valley, he understood that he had reached the most beautiful hell in the world. But where one man saw devastation, another saw the future. Pedro de Valdivia, a soldier without fortune or name, followed the same paths with a faith that knew no surrender. One discovered the land, the other founded it. Between them was born a story written with hunger, fire, and steel. The story of how Castile extended its voice to the end of the world and there found endurance, sacrifice, and glory. My name is Diego de Almagro. Today I will tell you my story in the lands of Chile. I served alongside Francisco Pizarro in the conquest of Peru, and we took Cuzco in the name of the king. But differences soon arose concerning the boundaries of the governorships. Emperor Charles in Toledo issued the capitulations that granted Pizarro New Castile and to me, the Adelantado of New Toledo, with a mandate to explore and govern to the south, but without clearly defined borders. To avoid a greater conflict, I chose to depart. In the middle of the year 1535, I gathered my men in Cuzco. We were around 500 Spaniards, veterans of infantry and cavalry campaigns, and thousands of Andean auxiliaries responsible for transport and service. Clergymen, interpreters, and families traveled with us. Our mission was to discover lands, open routes, and establish the authority of His Majesty where it had not yet reached. We took the Calasuyo route and entered the Calo Plateau. The terrain was cold and high, and every step was heavy. Villages along the way watched us in silence, while we maintained strict discipline during the march. My goal was to define the extent of New Toledo and to find places suitable for settlement and sustenance. I knew the south was uncertain and lacked accurate maps. I also knew that if I did not advance, others would lay claim to these lands. We continued through Paria, Tupiza, and Tarija, entering regions where no European had set foot before. The altitude punished mercilessly. Many auxiliaries died, and exhausted horses collapsed. Maize was scarce. Supplies dwindled to a few portions of dried meat and icy water. Discipline was the only thing that kept us standing. The nights were so cold that armor was covered in frost, and men awoke with numb hands. Each day we left a comrade behind with no time for ceremony. My captains, Rodrigo Orgoñez and Juan de Saavedra, maintained order. Orgoñez managed the pace and supplies, while Saavedra led ahead with small scouting parties. It was he who discovered the pass that allowed us to descend into lower lands. The journey lasted for months. When we finally left the peaks behind, the world changed its face. Ice gave way to an endless desert. The land was dry, without shade or water, and the men walked with covered faces to protect themselves from the sun. On the horizon, a green line appeared amid the sand. We did not know what awaited us there, but we all understood that the end of the crossing was near. It was the Copiapo Valley, the first habitable land we set foot on after months of ice and sand. There at last we rested. The local people received us with suspicion, but without hostility. They were farmers and shepherds who worked the land along the river and lived in small settlements. I took possession of the place in the name of His Majesty the Emperor. Those lands now belonged to the crown. After regaining our strength, we continued south. We crossed valleys inhabited by the Diaguitas, a hard-working and disciplined people who bore signs of the organization of the ancient Inca Empire. In some places we found roads and tambos from the Tawantinsuyo system, proof that Inca authority had reached those lands long before us. After weeks of marching we reached the Concagua Valley, where I established my main camp. From there I sent out small reconnaissance detachments. Captain Juan de Saavedra advanced even farther south, to the Mapuche Valley. He returned with news of fertile territory, rivers, abundant forests, and a mild climate. It was he who discovered Valparaiso. There were no precious metals there, only fertile land. The hope of finding a new Peru vanished. In the end, I had to return to Cuzco. It seemed that the problems with Pizarro had deepened. In the first months of the year 1537, we set out on the return journey. I had been the first European to see the lands of Chile, and I believed I had fulfilled my duty, but peace did not await me. I returned to a divided Peru. The supporters of Pizarro and my men were in open war. It was madness. I claimed that Cuzco belonged to the governorship of New Toledo, while Pizarro considered it his own domain. In the name of God and my king, in the year 1537, my troops occupied Cuzco to assert my authority, even if only briefly. Francisco Pizarro sent his brother Hernando with reinforcements. We faced each other at the Battle of Las Salinas. I lost the battle and was arrested. I was imprisoned in the fortress of Sacsayhuaman. I was accused of rebellion and of usurping royal authority, yet I had followed the orders given to me by my king. On the 8th of July of that same year, I received the sacraments and commended my soul to God. Into your hands, Lord, I commend my spirit. I was executed by garrote. They say that my son swore to avenge me. Years later, he fulfilled that oath by killing Francisco Pizarro in Lima. I did not conquer Chile. I discovered it, and although history often remembers others, my mark was the first. Spain had reached the end of the world, and there, at the edge of the known, I left my life and my name. My name is Pedro de Valdivia. I will not tell you how I crossed the lands of Chile. On Almagro's route I did not see defeat. I saw promise. He cleared the path. My task was to turn it into roots. I had no wealth and no coat of arms. I was a soldier from Extremadura, hardened in the Italian campaigns, and called to serve wherever duty required. In the year 1539, I received a license from Francisco Pizarro and the authority to go to Chile as his lieutenant governor. With that mandate, I departed from Cuzco in the year 1540. We were little more than a dozen Spaniards with auxiliaries, Yanaconas, and small livestock. Inés de Suarez came with me. Her spirit was both mace and shield in those difficult days. We crossed the desert with measured steps. We learned from Almagro's expedition and traveled with lighter loads and greater organization. When we entered the Mapuche Valley, I knew the land could sustain a city, with water plains and protective mountains, a natural crossroads of routes. There I ordered a palisade to be raised, the cross to be planted, and the royal banners to be fixed. On the 12th of February, in the year 1541, I founded Santiago del Nuevo Extremo in honor of the Apostle, patron of Spain. We were few to sustain and develop that city, but our persistence was enough. A city is built with few hands, but with strong will. We distributed plots of land, dug irrigation channels, established guard posts and cavalry. The lesson was clear. Without order there is no permanence, without commitment there is no kingdom. I knew the real work began that very day. Chile does not yield its fruits quickly. It demands long labor, vigilance, patience, and faith. I had not come to pass through, but to remain. That is why I built my home there and swore to defend the city with everything that belongs to a captain: sword, word, and example. Founding a city is the work of a moment. Sustaining it is a legacy. Only months had passed when Santiago was attacked. Michimalonco gathered a large force of Picunch warriors, determined to erase our presence from the valley. It was September of the year 1541 when the horizon stirred with war cries. I was on campaign nearby and left a small garrison in the city. I entrusted them with my life. Among them was Inés de Suarez. The attack was fierce. The palisade groaned, houses burned, but no one yielded. Inés organized the defense, distributed water and gunpowder to the wounded, and ordered the execution of the captured chiefs to break the attacker's will. The measure was harsh, but it worked. The assault was stopped. The city survived. When I returned, I saw ashes where hearths had been, but Santiago still stood. The people looked at me, waiting for an order. I spoke the words befitting a work of Spain: "Here we do not surrender. We rise from the ashes." We repaired the palisade, dug new channels, strengthened the storehouses, and stood guard. The city was reborn where many would have seen an end. Spain saw the beginning of an era in service to the king and the empire. Years later, the rebellion of Lautaro broke out. There I met my end. But that, as we say, is another story to be told another time. Thank you for watching.